This is Laura, City Scrapper. Thanks so much for joining me today. Today I have a layout that I made for a Punched Out Thursday to Die For, and I used a Christy's Beautiful Life 30 Days of Sketches sketch from day 27 of series 9. I'm still attempting to get all of the sketches from series 9 turned into layouts. When I looked at this sketch, I thought that it was perfect for the mood that I was in because I really felt like doing some mixed media. So I started with the two torn pieces of paper and I layered them on top of each other. I left a lot of white along the edge, especially of the blue paper, because when I ripped that paper, it just happened to have a nice big white edge to it. And I tried to make the two papers similar in the way that they were shaped when I ripped them. For this layout, I'm using a Pinkfresh Studio collection called Noteworthy. Now I took those two pieces of torn paper, I layered them on top of each other, and I attached them with some adhesive. And then I moved them to the right a little bit and then drew a line along the edge. And that way I knew that the pencil line wouldn't show because it would be underneath those ripped pieces of paper. I placed one of the packages of embellishments for this collection to the left of my layout. You could see it there. And I was thinking that I wanted to have that there in order to refer to know what the color scheme was for this collection. I noticed that one of the colors is yellow, and I thought that the yellow would be a really nice complement to the pink and the blue. So I used a couple of different sprays to create this background, this mixed media background. I used a Lindy's Starburst spray, and the color for that is Yellow Rose of Texas. I also used a Dylusions spray, and that color is Lemon Zest. I used a little of a Tattered Angels Glimmer Mist that is called Sunlight. I used the packaging technique and I moved the color around, and then I used my heat tool to dry the background, and now I'm sprinkling some water on the background and then rolling paper towel over it, and that lifts up a little bit of the color, and I just love the way it creates this little water droplet effect on the background. So now I have the sprays on the background, I have my torn pieces of paper. Now I'm ready to start thinking about the photos. So I am using two small photos and I attach them together so that they would be one unit and I could move them around. So then I wanted to do the same thing with the photos. I wanted to know for the stamping that I'm going to do where the photos are going to be. So I used my pencil and I traced around the photos, but I made sure that those pencil lines would go behind the photos because they're really hard to get off, I find, once you apply mixed media to the background. I'm using some Staz On Jet Black ink, and the first stamp that I'm using is a Stamper's Anonymous stamp. It's from a Tim Holtz collection called Faded Type, and instead of using the letters or the alphabets, I'm using the number stamp on this layout. I also wanted to add some stars. I don't know who the manufacturer is for these stars. This was a set I got quite a while back in Michael's. It was on clearance, and I kept looking at it and thinking it was a little bit expensive even for being on clearance, but I eventually picked it up, and I'm really glad I did because it is a set that I use a lot. I'll try to figure out what the name of the manufacturer is and put it in the description box. And then these smaller stars are from that same set. I thought that I would have 3 larger stars and then have a couple of smaller stars around the larger stars. And I forgot to mention that earlier on I added some little dots using a dot stamp. I have a whole bunch of rubber stamps that have dots in different configurations, and this is one of them. It doesn't have a manufacturer indicated anywhere on it, but I do like to use these kinds of stamps to add a little bit of detail to the background. There are some large stamps, and then I like to also add things that are very fine or very detailed. So I have a mixture of different size stamps on this layout. And you can see that I added the stars in a couple of different areas. Some are a little darker, some are a little lighter, and I like the way the different darknesses makes the layout a little bit more interesting. I wanted to add some more stamping in a couple of places. Once I put the photos on the background, I was able to see where I didn't have enough stamping and where I wanted to add some images to the background. When I first looked at the photos that I was going to use on today's layout, and I'll have those back on the layout in a minute, they're photos of my younger daughter, Julia, drinking from a huge glass, some kind of an ice cream concoction. We had taken her to a place called the Sugar Factory for her birthday. It's this restaurant that has these ridiculously sized glasses, and she saw one in Michael's or something similar in Michael's. So she made some kind of a drink for herself. And I was thinking that for embellishments, I would use ice cream scoops, ice cream themed embellishments. But then I decided that I didn't want to do that. I thought that it would be cute to use stars instead and then use a color scheme that went along with what you would picture for ice cream and candy and things like that. I wanted to highlight the stars, so I decided to paint them pink. To do that, I used a Tattered Angels Glimmer Mist, and the color is cherry. Once I painted the stars, I used a tiny paintbrush and I added some splatters all around the mixed media on the background. When I painted the stars, I didn't try to make the color flat. I added more pigment in some areas than others because I like the way it looks when some sides are a little lighter and some sides are a little darker on images that are painted like this. In general, I don't mind having large areas of white in the background, but when I have a color in the background, I always prefer to have a color that isn't flat, that has some variation in it. I just think it adds so much to the layout when there are various shades of, for example, pink, than when there's just a flat, even color. So I put on a second layer of the pink, but again, I put more paint in some areas than others. And now to have even more variation, I'm using that same technique where I sprinkle water on top of the stars and then I roll a paper towel over it. And I think you could really see on the pink stars how lifting up those water droplets with the paper towel makes a really cool effect. So then I used the heat gun and I dried the background again. And now I'm going to attach those torn pieces of paper down to the right side of the layout because I think that I'm done with the mixed media, although I do end up adding a little bit more. I wanted to distress those torn papers a little bit more. I put the adhesive right near the edge on the pink, so that was a little bit harder to distress because the edge was stuck down to the page. But for the blue paper, it was very easy because the adhesive wasn't near to that edge. I was able to distress the pink a little bit more, but it was just a lot easier on that blue piece of paper. At this point, I was thinking that there was a decent amount of black in the background, and I didn't want that to be the only place on the layout where there were black areas. So I used some black cardstock and I mounted my photos on a very thin mat of black cardstock. And I think that that helped to balance out the layout a little bit. I attach them back to each other again. And once again, I'm adding a little bit more stamping to the background. I wanted to add a little bit of dimension to the photos, so I'm using some fun foam and I am just cutting it to size. You could see the foam that I have here. I was using that as a mask when I put some white splatters on something, so it's speckled. But I covered the whole back of both of the photos with the fun foam, and now I'm adding some adhesive to the back, and I'm going to put those photos right back where I had them before. I'm using a Fiskars clear stamp. It's called Polka Dots, and I'm adding a couple of slightly larger circles to just a couple of places on the layout. I felt like there was just a little something missing, and I thought that this might help to fill in a couple of spots, but I didn't do too much stamping with this stamp. I just added a couple of these dots and circles. There are both solid dots and little circles on this stamp. And I wasn't disliking or loving those stamps, so I decided to just add a few. Now I'm going back in there with that dot stamp and I'm adding a few more little dots around the outside edge of the large area of mixed media. Now I have the background done, the photos attached down, so now I'm going to start embellishing the layout. I used embellishments from the cardstock stickers that went along with this paper collection and also the puffy stickers. And then in a little while, I'll also add some puffy alpha stickers. I added a cardstock sticker that says snapshots between the two photos. When I was all done with the layout, I was thinking it would look a lot better if it had a black border around it. So I did mat that sticker later on some black cardstock, and you'll see that in the final photos. I also added a cardstock sticker that says currently enjoying. I thought that went well with the photos. That's to the left of the photo cluster. And then I added some puffy stickers. I have a little banner that says loving this on the top left hand corner. I'm also adding some flowers and some leaves to the layout, and those are all puffy stickers. Up to the point of adding embellishments to the page, I stuck to the sketch really closely, but for the embellishments, I added them in some various places, not necessarily where the embellishments were on the sketch. I added a puffy sticker over the photo on the right that says little moments. And then I added some leaves and some flowers at the bottom of both of the photos. And then I had tried this sticker that says lovely earlier, and I didn't add it to the layout. I tried it, but I didn't end up leaving it on the layout. But then once I add the little sentiment, little moments, I added the word lovely on top of it. And I liked it there. Now, one of the tiny cardstock stickers said Everyday Bliss, and I was thinking that is a great title for this layout. So what I do is I take the puffy stickers and I write out the word bliss, and then I cut that little sentiment sticker in half, and I just use the word everyday on top of the word bliss that I'm spelling out. And I like those puffy multicolored letters that go along with this collection. On the sketch, the title is underneath the photos. I moved the title to the left because I thought that with everything that was going on with the mixed media in the background, that title would get lost if I put it under the photos. So I moved it to where there was some white background. And then I added some flowers to the left of the word bliss. I just thought that that would help to tie it in with the rest of the layout. I added a few more puffy stickers to the bottom left-hand side of the photo cluster. I wanted to make sure that I had a good balance of that dark green color on the layout. I was thinking that some of the stamping was a tiny bit too dark for me. I didn't want it to pop off the background so much, so I decided to go in with a little bit of gesso and just add a few touches of it to some of the stars and the other black elements on the background, just to help tone them down a little tiny bit. I wasn't trying to get rid of them. I just wanted them to fade a little bit more into the background. Now I'm adding some jewels to the background. I'm using the Pinkfresh Studio Essentials Jewels Mix. These jewels are really pretty. I've bought jewels from various places. These jewels are a little pricey, but they're definitely a step up from other jewels that I've used, so I think that they're worth it. They have a very beautiful shine to them, and the colors are really pretty. So I add pink, blue, and white jewels around the layout. I'm mainly using the smaller jewels, but I use the largest jewels in the centers of the 3 stars. To move the jewels around, I purchased some very inexpensive tweezers with pointy tips, and that has been really helpful in helping me to pick them up and place them where I want them on the layout. In order to glue them down to the layout, I'm using some glossy accents. I think this adhesive works really well with things like sequins and jewels, whereas the gel glue that I used to use works fine, but sometimes I would find that later on the jewels would come off, whereas with the glossy accents, they stay put. And I gave the layout a little shake to make sure there were no loose jewels. I wanted to add some photo corners to the layout, so I'm using those same pattern papers that I used in the background, the pink and the blue. And then I attach those down to each of the corners using the ATG gun. And I didn't add the photo corners to all of the corners. I just added them in the 2 right-hand corners and the 2 left-hand corners. I thought that since the photos are very small and they're overlapping in some areas, it would look the cleanest to just add the photo corners in those places. And I always like to add something, some kind of embellishment to the photo corners, or not always, but a lot of the time. So I'm using those same jewels. I'm using a medium size of blue on the pink photo corners and pink ones on the blue photo corners. And it's kind of crazy. This layout came together in just maybe 2 hours, which is nothing for me. I sometimes can spend an entire day or more than an entire day on a layout, but I think because I had that sketch and I had some pictures in mind, it came together pretty quickly. After I attached down the jewels to the photo corners, I added one little blue jewel to the puffy sticker at the top of the page. I wanted to add some black to the cluster with the title, so I found this little scribbly stamp in my stash, and I added some black lines under the title, and that completes the layout. Here are some close-ups. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope that you enjoyed it and found it useful. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this video today. If you look in the description box, you'll find links to the channels of all the other ladies who participate in A Punched Out Thursday to Die For. We have Kathy, Dorothy, Sonia, and Ronnie Sue Scrapper as well. I hope that everybody has a fantastic day, and I will see you next Thursday. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.